Welcome back, everyone. This is Tom from Cerulean Bay, and this is Tropical Escapes at Home. Hopefully, you all have had an awesome week out there. We've had one here. It's been good. It's been busy. Lots going on with the podcast and with our website, ceruleanbay.com. So be sure to check that out. What we're going to do today is pick up where we left off. Last week, we were talking about crafting your tropical escape outside. This is your DIY tips for outdoor retreats, and we called that part one. Today is going to be part two. We left off last week talking about site preparation and the things that go along with that. If you should happen to have a flat site, what you need to look for, including drainage problems or potential issues there, what to do and what not to do with utility easements. And we even got into slopes and hillsides and the things you need to watch out for with those. We do really recommend you bring in the pros for those unless you really know what you're doing, because slopes and hillsides, you don't want to deal with anything that's ultimately unstable or unsafe. So just really make sure you know what you're doing with those or bring in those professionals. But what we are going to do for today is pick up where we left off and get into balconies and small patio spaces. Let's just touch on those just for a bit here, because there are lots of people who live in apartments and condos, townhomes, patio homes, and you can easily create awesome little tropical retreats with spaces that are of those size. And what's really cool about them is they don't take a lot of time or money to do. I would say the most important thing to watch out for is size and scale of pieces. So you just really want to make sure that you don't overcrowd your space or put pieces out there which are simply too large and throw everything out of proportion. You want the overall size and scale of everything to blend in perfectly. It's that pleasing to the eye thing. And, you don't have to be an expert in home decor to know when something really looks out of whack or it just doesn't look right. If you really care about the space that you're trying to create, you're going to know when something just is not to your liking or it just doesn't work. And to get that level of completeness, we really recommend just paying attention to the size and scale of each piece. And that would include things like outdoor benches, chairs, and tables, even accent pieces like potted plants and any other decorative items that you can have outdoors. There are some really small pots and there's some really huge ones, and decorative artwork and things, they come in all shapes and sizes. So just be careful when choosing those. But as I mentioned earlier, one of the wonderful things about outdoor tropical escapes in balconies and small patios is that they're just quick to do, and you can really, really create something without a big, huge budget. The other wonderful thing that you can do with these spaces is you can create privacy. Privacy is important. It helps to create that peace and serenity that you're looking for. It helps you to block out the rest of the world visually, which then mentally translates into just relaxation and just that important mental well-being. But we get it. It can obviously be a challenge. So let's just talk about a couple things that you can do to create privacy in those small spaces. I would preface this first with just checking with your building management. Whether you are renting an apartment or you own your condo, just check with building management to make sure that you know what is allowed and what is not allowed. There are some places that are very, very strict when it comes to putting up things like bamboo screens against railings or just trying to create any type of privacy. While it might look really good when you are in your private space, you do have to consider what the other neighbors are looking at. If you have some cool neighbors who don't care, then obviously no problem. But sometimes there are those neighbors out there that want to make sure that everyone else is playing by the rules too. You don't want to end up creating some space which then you are going to have to take apart because it is violating some sort of rule. So make sure you check into that. When you think of things like bamboo screens or other ways to create some privacy, they can look really, really nice. There are ways to do it so everything is installed correctly, and then they do require maintenance just like anything else because it is outdoors and it is subject to the weather. But keep that in mind. Whatever you're going to do out there, make sure it is properly maintained. Replace things as needed, especially since other people can see it from the outside. And you don't want it to end up looking junky or trashy. You want it to look cool from both sides. And we're big advocates of being good neighbors, and hopefully you've got cool neighbors and you meet them and hang out with them and invite them over and have that wonderful cocktail out on your balcony. But yeah, just make sure that whatever you're doing out there can hold up to the weather and that it looks great, not only from your point of view, but from the point of view of your neighbors too. If something like bamboo screens don't work, you can use lots of potted plants. When you place those strategically along with other decorative items like tiki statues or small outdoor fountains or just other cool pieces of statuary, things that help to block in the view so that other people can't see in, that helps to create privacy. You usually don't want to go too tall with things on balconies, and even on small patios, because you don't want to box yourself in. You don't want to feel claustrophobic. And you also don't want to block any sunlight. Creating tropical spaces, it does require the use of plants, preferably. Plants need light. You want to make sure that they get all the light that they need. And if you live in a place where you happen to have a really cool view, why block that? You can incorporate that really cool view in as well. So with these small spaces, you'll see pretty quickly what will work and what won't. And we've seen some people do some pretty creative things out there just with some outdoor rugs and then a properly placed rattan chair, or maybe a cane chair, some really cool potted plants, just some really nice decorative pieces. Outdoor fountains are always really a cool touch. And then a bit of outdoor lighting, things that will light up at night, maybe some solar powered lights, things that you can plug in. This is where you can really get into the bistro lights or even, Christmas lights, those kinds of things. You can really create a really cool vibe in a small space. One thing that we really do want to point out as well when it comes to these small spaces is just like what you would need in a regular backyard is you've got to have some shade and shelter. And when you've got balconies, sometimes this kind of automatically happens when you've got neighboring balconies above you, or if you happen to live on a top floor and you've got the roof overhang there or some kind of roof line, then you've got kind of the same protection that you would get with a patio cover. And it is important because, you don't want to be out there roasting in the sun or, you want to provide some kind of protection from the rain. But when it's not the case and you don't have anything above you, it is important to try and come up with a solution for that. If you are able to safely install a small patio umbrella that looks nice from all angles and again won't offend the neighbors, then that's really important to do. I mean, obviously, you can't build a patio cover or things like that. And a lot of umbrellas are simply huge. But if building management allows it and you can find some really cool patio sized umbrellas, there are some really good ones out there that you can safely put out there. They'll come in some really heavy duty stands so they won't fly away in the wind because you definitely don't want that to happen. It is a challenge when you're on balconies to get some protection from the sun, depending on which way you're facing. But get online and do some research and see what you can find out there. If you should happen to have a small patio and you're on the ground floor, you've got like some patio space out there, it can be a challenge as well, space wise. Again, you want to make sure that things fit in proportionally. Just never forget about size and scale. And check to see what's available as well, because it is kind of the same issue that you'd run into with a balcony. You just don't have a lot of space. You want to make sure that things are allowable. There are some condo complexes where you are allowed to put up simple, smaller types of pergolas or other portable patio covers. They just have to be portable. So you need to be able to take them down if you should plan to move. You're not going to be allowed to obviously install anything that's permanent. So just get online, do some research, and see what might be out there. A lot of people think that you need to have big patio spaces or deck spaces to have things like pergolas. And obviously, if you are looking to permanently install one, that would be the case. But for smaller spaces, look into options for those smaller spaces. They are out there. Portable patio covers, give those some good consideration. And speaking of sun protection, a lot of that will depend on your local climate. If you are in a sunnier and warmer climate, obviously shade is a wonderful thing when it gets hot. So, for those of you that do have full size patios and yards, you should consider a wide range of umbrella options. There's all kinds of them out there, from patio sized ones to those giant deck umbrellas. There's some really cool Balinese or Indonesian styled umbrellas. They're very decorative. They like have some fringe hanging off of the ends and just some cool decorative aspects to them. They're very, very cool when you then blend that in with some plants and other accents and hanging lanterns. But, if the umbrella thing isn't going to work for you and you want to do something really cool like building a pergola, a lot of people are able to do that on their own. Some of those can be disassembled when necessary. But, if you're looking at that, or maybe you want to get into a gazebo or you want to do an actual patio cover, again, this is do it yourself. If you have the talent and the means to do that, I think that is awesome. And you're going to save yourself a boatload of money by being able to do it yourself. Or else call in the pros. If you've got the budget and you know your tropical spot is going to be that much better with some kind of a patio cover, then go for it. So I think we'll go ahead and move on to some other tips and tricks here. One thing we love in working in the outdoors and backyards and front yards are cinder blocks. And a lot of people are like, cinder blocks? Well, those are like boring and they're ugly. Yeah, they can be. But what you can do with them, and we've come across some really, really cool things online. There are so many things you can create using cinder blocks that are absolutely cool. And these are perfect if you are building in an easement space or somewhere where you might need to take things down and move it, or if you're renting and you don't want to do any permanent installs. These are things that you can literally take apart and move with you to your new location. So cinder blocks are cool. You can build big benches using uh, four by fours, or just different sizes of wood depending on the size of the hole in the cinder block, which will support. This allows you to create things from, small benches to large outdoor sofas where you can get outdoor cushions, patio cushions, and that would give you some padding, get some outdoor pillows. And there's tons of those out there in all kinds of really cool styles. But you can create outdoor side tables with them. Some of them even have a back, depending on how you structure the cinder blocks and set them up. They have a back that you can actually lean against, and you don't have to worry about anything falling apart or tipping over. Cinder blocks can be painted. We've seen some great examples where people paint these to just blend in, and then you put some cool potted plants, some great flowers around them. I mean, they really blend in with the scenery. You get some matching outdoor cushions and pillows, and they look really, really cool. Cinder blocks can be used for planter spaces too. So they have some blocks where they have one side of it which is sealed up for whatever purpose of the block is, for some construction purposes. So you've got an opening that you can fill and you can plant things in them. You might need to drill some drainage holes through there if you have some, like a good brick or concrete drill bit, so you can drill some holes in there for drainage. But in our blog post, we've got some cool examples of planters that people have built, multi-level planters with different parts recessed and different parts that protrude, and they've got succulents in there. Some people use them for growing herbs and small vegetables. You can stack it. It looks reasonably high. If you go 4 and 5 and 6 cinder blocks high, you've got some good planting space there. And again, these are stable if you constructing it properly and smartly. Then these are things that will withstand the weather, they'll withstand the wind. They're heavy, they're stable. You want to keep things secure. But there's a website, one that we really liked. It's Home BNC. Home BNC has some really, really cool ideas. that's a spot that you can check out. But if you Google cinder blocks and how to use them outside, you will get inundated with some really, really cool results. So let's talk about outdoor kitchens briefly. I think we might save that topic for another show. But what I do want to mention about them, because if you have them, great. Hopefully you use them, and hopefully they are located far away from the pool, especially a chlorine pool. I mention this because chlorine pools do emit some level of chlorine into the air, and it's harmless to be around when you're enjoying your backyard and going for a swim. But that chlorine does get into the air, and we found out it does corrode metal, or at least certain types of metal. So if you're considering installing an outdoor kitchen or something like a portable grill, like a stainless steel one that you would get at Lowe's or Home Depot, try and keep it as far as you can from the pool. In our backyard, as I've mentioned, we do have a pool with a pool deck, but we do have very limited space for an outdoor kitchen. We really only have room for a portable grill. And so the ones we've had have been close to our back door up against the house, but it's still literally only feet from the water. And I noticed over the years that they would just corrode. The grills would rust out no matter how well I cleaned them or how well I tried to protect them. The exterior surfaces would just kind of get pitted, and that whitish corrosion-y powder or whatever it's called would just build up in certain places. And we even invested in a few heavy-duty canvas grill covers. I mean, those things are not cheap. So, you've got the entire grill covered up, and we still had corrosion issues. So I'm thinking, what the hell? Why can't I keep a decent grill here? And I've been through 3 in the 20 years we've been in this house. And so we just finally gave up. And Edna and I, we just use a grill pan now on the big 48-inch Thermidor that's in our kitchen, and I just grill indoors. But how I found out about this was that we were having problems with the lock that would go into our garage with the door handle. And it would just jam up, and even spraying WD-40 in there didn't work. The whole handle itself was just really, really weathered. And we had a locksmith come out because we had to get a new one, and we wanted him to rekey it so that we could use the same key that goes to our front door. And he was the one that told us about it. And, I had asked him, why is this corrosion going on? And I told him about the grills, and you could see it on the doorknob. And he said, it's the chlorine that's emanating from the pool. I think people who have saltwater pools, this isn't a problem. I've never had a saltwater pool, so I can't confirm that. But I do know for chlorinated pools, it is a problem. So I've also tested this theory with my brother, who lives about a half hour from me. And he and his wife have a wonderful pool. They've got an awesome backyard with steps that lead up to the house. And they have a really nice outdoor covered patio area there. And his grill is way up there, far from the water. So he has a lot less weathering and a lot less corrosion. They haven't had to replace their grill in years. So there is something to this. There is weathering and corrosion that happens the closer your grill is to the pool. His is still in great shape. It's still functional. So for me, that was proof that the farther you can keep your grill from any chlorinated water, I think you are going to be all the better for it. They will last a lot longer. So there is your outdoor kitchen tip for the day. As I said, I think we'll go ahead and do a separate show about outdoor kitchens because there's a lot of other cool stuff we can talk about having to do with those. But for now, let's just go ahead and move on. So let's get into some landscaping tips. If you have decided that you do want to include landscaping as a significant part of your tropical retreat, then what we suggest doing is planting along a fence line or in an existing flower bed space to create kind of like that cozy, intimate feel. You want to have your taller bushes and plants set further back, with then the medium ones coming in and then the shorter ground level or ground cover ones being closest to you at your flooring, at your pavers, where you're going to be sitting. So this is where you can really plant some cool bushes and smaller trees to hide ugly fences or just to kind of create that barrier. And then again, find more medium-sized bushes to bring in, and then you get more compact and as you're coming towards the front. you can create a really cool, authentic, high-end resort style look by carefully choosing your plants, doing some online research. We've got some cool blog posts about indoor and outdoor tropical plants, plants for landscaping, how to use plants in pots. So, this layering is what creates a lot of depth. It creates visual interest, and it really adds to the beauty and serenity of the space. You can really, really do some nice things if you layer correctly. And in our blog about this DIY retreat space, I'll share the link in our show notes. Check it out because we've got some cool imagery in there. And there's also a link to the USDA plant hardiness map. If you're not familiar with that, we really suggest you check it out because it's got the US broken into hardiness zones. And this is important to know. Over the years, I've tested this too. And it's easier to use if the climate where you are is relatively stable and not the flippin' roller coaster that it is here in Houston. But it does help a lot in selecting the right plants for your hardiness zone. The issue we run into here, I would say from Corpus Christi going northward up through Houston and over through Louisiana, you get into all the way over the panhandle of Florida. I think it probably starts to get easier as you then go down the west coast of Florida and you get into the Tampa area. Probably from Tampa northward all the way over to Corpus. That's where it's just tricky in the wintertime. Because if we did not have cold fronts coming through, the weather, I think, in large part would be a lot like South Florida here. When you get into South Florida, so south of Tampa, or, you're on the East Coast side over there in Miami, they have very little variation in the weather compared to what we do here. Yeah, they get into the 60s and 70s. They have their days in the wintertime, but it's always then in the 70s and 80s. I mean, anything can survive in the 70s and 80s. And, you're not dealing with those nights, those rare nights where it, dips into the teens or, well, that is rare here for Houston, but it dips into the 20s here. We just came through that, a month ago with the snow we had. And then this last week is in the 20s and 30s. That's enough to wipe out tropical plants. There are winters where things can be mild and these plants survive. And then the next winter, it just takes one hard freeze or an Arctic front to come through and wipe you out. So check that hardiness map. And then if you're in an area like ours where it can be very hit or miss in the winter, that's where unfortunately you're just going to have to look at pots. And I say unfortunately because I love tropical plants. I wish I could put them in the ground. I've lived here for over 20 years and it still bothers me that I have to deal with this in the wintertime. But pots will save you. They can be very, very cool when it comes to brightening up a space, just adding some more life or some cultural flair if you're looking for a little bit of that international look or something, because there's just a lot of cool outdoor pots out there. So, yeah, while I love to stick things in the ground and I want some permanence, pots are very, very cool for bringing in color. You get some boldly colored ones or just really cool designs. The cool thing with pots is you can move them around. You can rearrange things. When you get plants that are doing very well in them, yeah, they're heavy. They're kind of tough to move around, but you get yourself a good dolly or, get somebody to help you. So, no back injuries allowed here. You do need to move them in climates with cold weather. And that means putting them in the garage, putting them in sheds if you have it. You've got to have some place to put them. Smaller ones, we bring them in the house here, just inside in our breakfast area. Whenever it goes below 32 in the winter, we've got all our smaller ones in the house. We don't have lots of them because over the years, me personally, I just, it was getting to be too much to bring all of these in the house and we just didn't have the room. And in our garage, we don't have a lot of room. So, even when you cover them outside with, good sheets and blankets, I think plants in the ground do better if you're covering with sheets and blankets. But the pot, because it's above ground, the whole pot itself is just exposed to that weather that's in the 20s and the 30s. And a lot of potted plants, they just don't do well if they're not meant for the climate. So yeah, if you're going to use a lot of pots, make sure that you can move them, bring them indoors, put them in the garage, put them in a storage shed. a greenhouse if you have one, just something where they can be protected from the elements. So once you have your landscaping and your potted plants and all of that figured out, and you've got your outdoor furnishings and, either what you plan to buy or if you've already bought them, you've got everything placed and just some cool outdoor art, outdoor decorative pieces. When you've got all of that put together, consider lighting. I think lighting is super important in tropical spaces. Lighting should be in overhead forms, whether you have a pergola or if it's a gazebo that you're working with, or you've got an actual solid patio cover. Consider those vintage patio string lights or bistro lights. And we've got some links to some cool patio string lights in this blog post, which you can check out. But yeah, consider string lights, bistro lights, overhead hanging lanterns. Those can be wired, or, if you've got good electrical outlet access, they can either be plugged in or things that can be safely used with a power strip out there. They come in so many different styles and sizes. If you have a solid patio cover, or maybe it has an outdoor ceiling fan, it's got a good light kit on there. If it doesn't, see if you can change it out and just to have some really cool lighting out there. As I've mentioned in an earlier post, we love dimmers. Anything that you can put on a dimmer for lighting is awesome. But yeah, consider overhead lighting. That's just one zone to have it in. Another zone is mid-rise lighting. This is lighting that's on tabletops. Maybe you've got some really cool outdoor lamps, tiki torches, things that are kind of at that mid height. String lighting that can be attached to nearby walls, maybe on the fence. Uh, Fence mounted solar lighting. Our neighbor actually has some, which are really cool. I see them come on at night, but they come in different colors. But yeah, these are solar lights and they're just mounted on your fence. Very simple. So many lighting ideas out there. Then there's ground level. This adds the whole dimension from ground level to mid rise to overhead. Now you've got this whole look from top to bottom. But in ground level lighting, here you're looking at landscape lighting. Uplights, we're a huge fan of uplights. Uplighting is just so cool. Pathway lights, cool solar lanterns. There's some really cool ones that you can find online too, just really, really neat looking. Some things that, they just come from some cool countries. There's Turkish lamps, there's Middle Eastern ones that just have a lot of culture to them. And they've got the solar, the solar mechanism built in there where they're just solar powered. You don't even need to worry about batteries. So check those out. Outdoor lanterns are really cool. Some of them sit on the ground. Again, those can be on tabletops too. It's just very, very cool. Lighting is important. Just the nighttime vibe that it creates. If you are in an area like we are, we get a lot of mosquitoes, and man, they will find Edna. There can be one mosquito in Houston. It will find my wife. So, make sure that you've got the citronella candles going, any kind of good and safe mosquito repellents, because when you've got a really cool tropical escape, you should be able to enjoy it anytime you want. Don't let the mosquitoes win. That's what I always tell her. We will find a way to battle the mosquitoes. So we do. And the citronella seems to work. But yeah, so there you go. When you are done with the lighting and with everything that you have constructed, whether you've done it on your own or you had to get some outside help, just step back and look at the little tropical paradise that you've created. Hopefully it will give you that truly magical feeling, that sense that I did it. Look at this. This is really, really cool. I love this. I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this space. That's the end goal. You've got your tropical vibe coming at you from plants that are in the ground if your climate supports it. More plants in pots if your climate doesn't support it. You've got outdoor wall art, pieces that sit on the ground, maybe some tabletop decor pieces, really cool string lights and lanterns, and just any upholstery out there that just really pops with color. If you've made your own furniture from cinderblocks, it's just maybe painted in some bright turquoises and greens, and you've got some really cool patio cushions out there, just so that it just speaks to you in a really, really cool tropical way. When you're feeling that, you have achieved your goal. And I think that is totally awesome when people do that. And it's kudos to you and a big kudos to anybody that might have helped you get there. But these are places that will help you relax. They help you unwind. They contribute to positivity in life. They help you escape from just the craziness of your daily job and of the world and things going on in it. So yeah, I'm hoping the ideas that we shared with you have inspired you and have just given you some great creative energy to get online and look. Again, check out our website. We've got some blog posts with some really cool imagery on there. And, if you could share the inspiration, tell your friends about us, visit us on ceruleanbay.com, visit us on Patreon. We have our page there. Consider supporting us. Your support is what helps allow us to keep doing what we love. And what we love to do is create great content and just share it with people and really connect with people however we can and meet cool people. We just love meeting cool people and just sharing great life experiences and great ideas. When you get out and meet people and talk to people, the ideas and things that you can come across that they have to share, it's just wonderful. We absolutely love that. So yeah, consider sharing us, share our blog post with people, just tell people about us. We really, really appreciate it. And I think at this point, we'll go ahead and let you go. You've got some work to do to create that tropical spot outside there. So get to it. We wish you all the best, tons of creativity, great health and happiness, and we will see you in our next episode. Thank you so much for joining us, for taking time out of your busy day. It really means a lot. You guys have a good one, and we will catch you next time. Take care. Bye bye.